The summer of 2025 in the grip of a severe crisis. Water and fuel shortages have now spread across the entire country. The scale of the crisis is so great that, during a recent visit to Tabriz, President Masoud Pezeshkian's convoy came to a halt when vehicles broke down due to gasoline diluted with water. This fuel smuggling scandal has revealed not only the collapse of the energy infrastructure, but also the failure of oversight systems. Yet the real danger is growing on an invisible front in Iran's drying lands. Today, around 88 million people live in Iran. Over 75% of the population resides in urban areas. The cities of Tehran, Mashhad, Isfahan, Tabriz, and Shiraz alone are home to roughly 35 million people. These major cities lie at the heart of the water crisis, driven by heavy consumption and growing pressure on infrastructure. Iran has access to less than 1,000 cubic meters of water per person annually, placing it in the category of water-scarce countries. The 2024 to 2025 water year has been recorded as one of the driest periods in recent history. Nationwide rainfall has dropped by 45% compared to the previous year. According to reports from the Parliamentary Research Center, rainfall during just the autumn and winter of 2024 fell by 43%. Water levels in many of the country's dams have dropped below 36 to 50%. The intensity of the drought varies by region. In the southern province of Hormozgan, rainfall has decreased by 77%. In Sistan and Baluchistan, the drop is 72%. In both provinces, precipitation has fallen more than 75% below the 20-year average. Even in the capital, Tehran, rainfall has fallen 38 to 40% below normal levels. Iran is already one of the driest countries in the world in terms of climate. Around 85% of its land is classified as semi-arid, arid, or desert. Water has always been a limited resource in Iran, but today that scarcity has become critical. Iran's annual average rainfall is just around 250 millimeters, about one-third of the global average of 800 millimeters. In some areas, this number falls below 100 millimeters. In recent years, the impact of climate change has intensified the drought cycles, making them more frequent and prolonged. Droughts no longer last just 1 or 2 years. Now they stretch over 5 to 7-year periods. Rainfall has not only decreased in volume but also changed in pattern. In the past, winter snow would slowly melt to feed natural water sources in the spring. Today, sudden rainfalls quickly run off before the soil can absorb any moisture, preventing groundwater from being replenished. Regions such as Khuzestan in the southwest, the Isfahan Basin, and Sistan-Baluchistan have faced severe water shortages for years. These areas receive little to no rainfall, and their dams and rivers have largely dried up. The Karan River in Khuzestan, once a vital water source, has nearly vanished due to industrial use and diversion projects. The summer of 2025 brought record-breaking temperatures. In many parts of the country, thermometers climbed above 50 degrees Celsius. This extreme heat accelerated evaporation and doubled the demand for drinking water. It also caused dam levels to drop sharply. The Lar Dam, which supplies water to Tehran, is operating at just 1% capacity. The Karaj Dam is at 13%. These are among the lowest levels seen in the past 50 years. All of this points to a crisis that is not only rooted in poor management, but also in Iran's geography and climate. Yet the problem isn't entirely natural. Poor policy decisions, weak infrastructure, and unplanned urban growth have all made things worse. Agriculture is the biggest consumer of water in Iran, accounting for around 90% of total water usage. But despite this heavy use, efficiency remains low. The main reason is that traditional outdated irrigation techniques are still widely used. For instance, in a method known as flood irrigation, water is simply poured directly onto fields, and much of it is lost to evaporation or surface runoff. Modern irrigation systems are used in only a small fraction of the sector. As a result, not only is there too little water, but a large portion of it is wasted. Agricultural water efficiency in Iran, meaning the amount of crop produced per unit of water, falls far below the global average. Another major issue is crop selection. What is grown, where and how. In Iran, crops with extremely high water needs, like rice, sugar beet, cotton and watermelon, are being cultivated in the country's driest regions. In provinces like Khuzestan and Sistan-Baluchistan, where annual rainfall is already low, growing such water-intensive crops only deepens the crisis. This agricultural strategy puts pressure on both the environment and the economy. Infrastructure investments made for irrigation projects often go to waste because long-term sustainability can't be achieved. Farmers, under economic pressure, are often forced to plant the wrong crops. Government incentives and guidance are either weak or non-existent. As a result, farmers suffer, and the country's water reserves are depleted even faster. All this clearly shows that agriculture lies at the heart of Iran's water crisis. If crop patterns and irrigation methods don't change, even a full collapse of agricultural production is no longer unthinkable. But the water crisis in Iran doesn't just impact the environment, it affects people directly. Especially in rural areas, farmers can no longer sustain their livelihoods. Wells are drying up and fields can't be irrigated. Many farmers who once supported their families through the land are now being forced to abandon it. In recent years, this has led to a sharp drop in rural populations and unplanned waves of migration into cities. According to the Iranian Statistical Center, nearly 4 million people migrated from rural areas to major cities between 2015 and 2022. Shantytowns have begun to form around urban centers like Isfahan, Shiraz, Tehran, and Mashhad. This sudden population growth has overwhelmed city infrastructure. Unemployment has risen, housing shortages have worsened, public services have failed to keep up, and most of the migrants lack the skills needed to find work in urban areas. They come from rural backgrounds and aren't equipped for city jobs. All of this fuels social tension, not just economic, but psychological and societal as well. Farmers who once cultivated their own land are now forced to work in cities, often in low-paying, insecure jobs. Family structures are breaking down, and young people are increasingly losing hope for the future. This wave of migration is also impacting Iran's ethnic and regional sensitivities. In places like Khuzestan, where the population is predominantly of Arab origin, the sense of discrimination, combined with water shortages, is accelerating migration. In some cases, this has triggered large-scale protests and even led to security concerns. All of this shows that Iran's water crisis is no longer just an environmental issue. It has become a deep socio-economic challenge. If this trend of migration cannot be curbed, Iran's cities could face far more severe humanitarian and infrastructure crises in the coming years. To address the crisis, the Iranian government has launched a three-stage plan. First, schools and government offices have been closed in some regions. Water rationing has begun. In the short term, efforts are underway to repair the country's aging water infrastructure. In the long term, the government is planning large-scale projects, including desalination plants and water pipelines to carry supplies from distant regions. However, there are serious obstacles. Funding is limited, governance remains weak, and international pressures make progress even more difficult. The government now openly refers to the situation as a crisis and is issuing stark warnings to the public. President Masoud Pezeshkian has called on citizens to cut water usage by 20%. Officials have also announced penalties for excessive consumption, including up to 12-hour cuts for high-usage subscribers. In Tehran, heavy water users are being classified for regular shutoffs. In effect, excessive water consumption is hitting a wall. Meanwhile, construction has been accelerated on the Kamabani Hashem water ring pipeline surrounding Tehran. In the city's western districts, the system has already gone online. The project is expected to be completed in the coming months. After protests broke out over the Isfahan-Yazd pipeline, 13 mobile water tankers were deployed to the area. In Yazd, the population is on red alert, and the main water supply network is no longer sufficient. There are also long-term plans underway. The government is building desalination plants along the coasts of the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. A total of 50 facilities are planned for 17 provinces, with the aim of supplying fresh water to 45 million people. Due to low rainfall and disputes over water sharing with neighboring countries, Iran has initiated diplomatic talks with Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. But harsh US sanctions continue to restrict Iran's access to international financing. This slows down infrastructure investments and technical cooperation on water projects. Civil society groups and experts say that Iran is failing to manage its water resources effectively. The public has no real voice in government decision-making, and the administration lacks transparency. Instead of introducing long-term structural reforms, the government is relying on consumption restrictions and limited penalties. But this approach risks blocking real, lasting solutions. So far, the government has not proven capable of resolving the crisis. Criticism is especially directed at the Revolutionary Guard, the regime's powerful military wing. A large share of the country's water is being redirected to projects controlled by this faction. While ordinary citizens struggle with shortages, water continues to flow to nuclear plants, mining operations, and military facilities. To overcome the water crisis, Iran needs massive investment. Expensive and complex projects like new infrastructure, desalination plants, pipelines, and modern irrigation systems require large-scale funding, and the government currently lacks the budget to make that happen. But securing these resources remains a major challenge. One of the biggest obstacles to resolving Iran's water crisis is international sanctions. Sanctions severely restrict the country's access to global financial markets. Conducting transactions with foreign banks, securing external loans, or attracting investment has become extremely difficult, making it nearly impossible to fund large-scale projects. Another major hurdle is the ongoing economic crisis. In recent years, Iran's economy has suffered significantly. Inflation has soared, incomes have declined, and government revenues have shrunk. As a result, the state has very limited budget capacity for infrastructure or environmental investments. Most funds are directed towards security, defense, and social spending. Inefficient and non-transparent use of public resources, along with poor investment and management decisions, have led to massive financial waste. Unplanned projects and corruption further prevent the budget from being used effectively. Solving the water crisis also requires advanced technology and a highly skilled workforce, both of which come with additional costs. And Iran's dependence on foreign technology in certain areas makes expanding these investments even harder. In short, Iran's inability to generate the financial capacity needed to address the water crisis, due to both economic and political constraints, is one of the main reasons the problem is getting worse. Without the lifting of sanctions and the implementation of serious economic reforms, major progress in this area will remain unlikely. Experts say Iran needs to take key steps to address the water crisis. First and foremost, water must be used efficiently and equitably. That means better management of existing resources. In agriculture and other sectors, it's vital to adopt new technologies such as drip irrigation to reduce consumption. Iranian environmental expert Kaveh Madani describes the country's situation as a water bankruptcy, calling for urgent reforms in water governance. He stresses that poor resource use and infrastructure problems are driving the crisis. Ahad Vazifeh, head of Iran's meteorological organization, says that unsustainable water withdrawals must be halted. He advocates for investments in modern irrigation systems and changes in farming practices, but he also notes that these warnings have gone ignored for years. In addition to management reforms, Iran must also renew and upgrade water purification and storage facilities. And public awareness is crucial. People need to be educated about water conservation and how they can play a role in preventing further depletion. Finally, Iran must cooperate with its neighboring countries to share and manage water resources collectively. If these steps are taken together, the water crisis in Iran can be resolved more effectively. This crisis goes far beyond being an environmental issue. Years of neglect, misguided policies, economic hardship, and international sanctions have all contributed to its deepening. The depletion and mismanagement of water resources have had far-reaching consequences, affecting everything from agriculture and urban life to economic stability and the country's social fabric. Migration, unemployment, infrastructure breakdowns, and social unrest are among the inevitable outcomes of this situation. Yet despite these challenges, there is still hope for a solution. As experts emphasize, effective water management, investment in technology, public awareness, and regional cooperation are essential steps for overcoming this crisis. The Iranian government's planned infrastructure projects, such as semi-desalination plants and efforts to develop new water sources, are promising steps in the right direction. However, for these efforts to succeed, transparency in governance, efficient use of financial resources, and international support are all crucial. The future will depend on how Iran responds to this crisis. If the necessary measures are not taken, the country risks not only losing its water resources, but also its social peace and economic stability. Nevertheless, with the right strategies supported by science and technology, it is possible to overcome this challenge. There is no time to waste. To improve the quality of life for its people, protect natural resources, and build a sustainable future, Iran must act immediately. This is not just a national issue. It is a challenge with serious implications for the entire